So I'm going to need everybody to bring it down because we have our next speaker who is actually in Washington, D.C., so she is joining us on the phone. And I'm excited to introduce Leah. I actually have a history with Leah. She and I worked on a project, 5+ years ago, that was really around community and other stakeholder involvement in research. And so I was really excited when I got to interact with her through this project, even though at a tangent, this has been a person I would consider an early adopter and an early leader in this field. So it's great that she's at PCORI and really leading the Eugene Washington PCORI Engagement Awards and other engagement efforts within PCORI's work. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Leah to give the next presentation with the caveat that when we get to questions and answers, to make sure that you look for the microphone so that she can hear you, hear the question. Otherwise, we'll repeat it. All right, over to you, Leah.
All right, great. Thank you, Danielle, and thank you for that warm introduction. It's also wonderful to work with you again, and I know you all are doing great work there out on the West Coast. So thanks for being able to allow me to participate remotely. I'm Leah Hotchkiss, and I'm the director of the Eugene Washington PCORI Engagement Award Program here at PCORI, and I'm really pleased to be able to participate and talk with you all today. So I know over the course of the past day and a half, you've heard a lot about patient and stakeholder engagement in research. And I've laid out here why PCORI feels that it's important to engage these stakeholders in the research process. So first and foremost, we believe that engagement will really influence research to be more patient-centered and relevant and useful to patients and others. Engagement also leads to trust and a sense of legitimacy in the research findings. And then finally, if patients and stakeholders are bought into the research, they trust it, they think it's they think it's worthwhile and it's trustworthy, then ultimately it'll be more likely to be used and used to help inform decision making. On the next slide, I've laid out a little bit more about the specific program that I lead, the Engagement Award Program here. As many of you may know, the majority of PCORI's dollars do fund clinical comparative effectiveness research studies. However, we do have funding set aside to allow us to provide funding for engagement projects, such as the one that Danielle is leading, to really create an inventory or repository of tools and resources that can be used by others who are looking to do engagement. So the goal of the Engagement Award Program is to support projects that focus on building a community better able to participate in research and also serve as channels to disseminate study findings. So the idea here is that funding is for projects with an emphasis on engagement, not for research. And through these projects, we anticipate and we've seen some wonderful deliverables being produced that we aim to make publicly available. So we'll post all of the content, the information, the tools that come out of these engagement awards on the PCORI website so that it can be used not only by the awardee and PCORI, but also by the broader community looking for these sorts of tools. So the goals of the Engagement Award Program are to develop a community skilled in PCOR, to involve that community in research, and ultimately to engage them in the dissemination of our research findings. We have two primary types of engagement awards. The first type are for these engagement projects that I've been describing. We've laid out here in the first few bullets the types, the focus of some of the projects that we've seen. Some of them are really helping to build the knowledge base about how patients and stakeholders want to be part of the research process or how they want to receive research findings. The majority of our projects have a training or skill development piece to it. When we talk about building capacity, we talk about implementing trainings or skill development about that engagement piece. And then ultimately we have some projects that are helping us to plan for disseminating PCORI's research findings, and we've really been placing a greater emphasis on this award type over the past few months. And then the second type of funding that we have through the Engagement Awards is for meetings and conferences. We provide funding support for meetings and conferences that align with PCORI's mission and strategic plan and really focus on expanding PCOR and CER. Some of the meetings and conferences we funded so far focus on research design, methodologies for PCOR, developing research agendas, and then, again, planning for dissemination of PCORI's findings. So the engagement awards can be up to 2 years in duration, up to $250,000. So while this may seem like a relatively small amount for those who are familiar with clinical trial budgets, this is actually, this amount we've seen engagement awardees do an amazing amount of work with, and I'm really proud of the amount of engagement that's being done in these smaller projects. On the next slide, I've laid out for you, or identified for you, a few of the recent projects and conferences that we've funded through the Engagement Awards. We have about 150 that have been selected since the program began back in 2014, and this is just a small sampling for you to get a better sense of the types of work that we're funding. More information about each of our projects can be found on the PCORI website under the Research and Results tab. And the products that I've mentioned are also posted on the project pages on the PCORI website. So just to walk through these very quickly, I've highlighted the Penn State College of Nursing Engagement Award. The idea here is to implement training for not only community stakeholders, but also for nurses. They're going to be working to develop these teams to be able to conduct PCOR. We've made an award to the Celiac Disease Foundation. This is a project that's focusing on including patients and stakeholders with celiac disease to, again, create a patient-led network that can be part of the research process and serve as sort of advisors to researchers who want to do research for celiac disease. The National Hispanic Health Foundation is leading a conference focused on developing a research agenda relevant to the needs of Hispanic population, and it's also focusing on building the skills of stakeholders, of Hispanic researchers who want to continue to focus in that area. And then we've also made awards to the Hereditary Neuropathy Foundation for a series of workshops, as well as to the University of Texas at Austin. This last one is unique because it's really focusing on the mental health needs of returning veterans and their families, and it's being led by veteran spouses, and they're developing this online forum to raise awareness about PCOR, connect them with researchers who are doing mental health research, and hopefully create a sustainable network for being engaged in research going forward. So as you can tell, these projects, there's really no one-size-fits-all. We're really looking for projects that are innovative, that involve the stakeholders in the development of the project, and will ultimately result in information, tools, resources, et cetera, that could be beneficial to the larger community looking for engagement resources. It's not to say that the only way you can get involved with PCORI is to apply for or be part of an engagement award. We have many more opportunities that you can become involved with PCORI, even if you're not a researcher or you're not someone who's leading an engagement project. We encourage anyone to go to the PCORI website and offer suggestions for the types of research questions that are important to you. You can participate in many of our different events. We have an entire section of our website that lays out the information about meetings and events that we have coming up. Many of our events allow folks to participate remotely, so that's a nice opportunity. And also we're looking for reviewers of funding applications. So you don't have to be a researcher to be part of our merit review process. We also include patients and clinicians and others who want to be involved in the review process as merit reviewers. We have a unique program called our Ambassador Program. This is an opportunity for us to enlist patients and others who want to serve as PCORI, I don't want to say cheerleaders, but PCORI ambassadors. So we provide some training about PCORI's vision and mission, and it allows these folks to be able to go on and spread the good word about PCORI in their communities. We have advisory panels. We have 7 multi-stakeholder advisory panels, including a patient engagement advisory panel. And these panels really advise on all of our different portfolios of work. And we have a call for advisory panel applications about every year when we have a rotation in panelists. And then finally, you can just learn about engagement and research by checking out our website. We have many great resources available on our website, including our engagement rubric. The engagement rubric is a really unique tool that was created by PCORI that illustrates how researchers can engage patients throughout the different steps of the research process. So this might be something that Chineni shared with you all yesterday during her presentation, but again, it's something that we post publicly and we encourage folks to become familiar with. So that's a really high-level overview of the Engagement Award Program, as well as other opportunities for engagement with PCORI. I know I covered a lot of information in a short amount of time, so I've listed up here on the page my contact information. I'd be happy to talk with anybody who wants to learn more about the program or who has potential ideas for an engagement award. And here's the link to our website, specifically in the Engagement Award page, where I'm happy to report that there's some videos of current engagement awardees talking about their projects, and you'll see a nice video that highlights Danielle and her work. So with that, I turn it back to you all, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has today.
So we have a question for you, Leah. Beth?
Go ahead.
Yeah?
Okay. Can you explain how this is different than a pipeline to proposal award outside of that funding amount?
Yeah, that's a great question. So since the program started, we've been really working closely with the pipeline proposal folks to make sure that we can differentiate our two programs, because at one point they were together and then we pulled them apart about 2 years ago. The pipeline to proposal awards are ultimately focused on getting the awardee to a point where they're applying to funders like PCORI with an application. So it's funding support to help you develop a proposal that you'll submit to a group like PCORI. That's really not the focus of the engagement awards. Here we are focused on the engagement projects. We really don't expect that engagement awardees, we actually ask that engagement awardees do not use funding to actually prepare applications to funders. So that's really the big difference here. The engagement awards are for engagement-focused projects. The pipeline to proposal awards are seed funding to help you get to a point where you're applying to a funder like PCORI, and you sort of have that set-aside funding to actually prepare a research application.
What other questions are there for Leah? So Leah, I think it's interesting, one of the themes that's come through from the group discussion has been around mentorship. And you highlighted one of the projects that's focused on mentorship, recognizing that there's this element of experiential learning. Are there other projects that you've seen that theme come through?
Yeah, we have seen a lot of, we have a few projects that have mentorship components to them. We also have a few projects where they're sort of this researcher patient dyad model. So, for example, NAPRG, the North American Primary Care Research Group, has created an interesting model, and more information about it is on our website, where they have paired clinicians who do research with patients to actually work together to think about how they can work together to really form a team that can be involved down the road in submitting applications, preparing applications for research funders. So I wouldn't say mentorship is a huge theme. I think there's sort of trickled in a few of our projects, and hopefully we'll have some tools steps we'll be able to share when some of these projects get off the ground. But I do think that this dyad approach, where you're pairing somebody more experienced with somebody who represents the patient perspective together to help form potential, teams for research, I think that's an interesting model, and we will have more to share about that NAFSTRIKE project relatively soon.
Perfect. What other questions are there in the room? Any? Yep.
Has PCORI considered a researcher mentor situation in which a researcher who's especially effectively conducted a patient partnership-oriented project helps to mentor someone who never has as a scientist?
That's a fabulous question and a fabulous idea. I have not seen that proposed. It could just be that that's a little bit outside of the engagement award purview. Unless we've received an application for something like that, it's not something that we would initiate. However, this is it's an idea that I can certainly check back with our engagement officers about. As you might have learned from Chinenye, the engagement officers serve in this unique role where they sort of serve as advisors to research teams about how to do engagement and how to do it well. And I wonder if there has been any discussion within the patient engagement program at PCORI about possibly pairing more seasoned researchers who have sort of that engagement expertise with those who don't. So I'm happy to check back with the patient engagement folks and find out if that's ever been thought of. And if not, I can certainly float that idea. So I'm happy if you want to provide Danielle with your contact information, I can follow up with you about that question.
And I think Chinenye has something to add to that.
Yeah, just a comment. We don't necessarily have a formal program, although I think it's an excellent idea. Currently, what we do is we typically connect PIs together, those who are already awarded. If they're having similar issues or challenges with respect to patient engagement, we connect them with each other. And then they sort of build relationships from there. We haven't necessarily tracked the end result or the outcome of those connections, but it's definitely something I think that's worth exploring. Thank you.
And just to follow up, I will make the obvious statement that someone who's very good at science isn't necessarily instinctually prepared for engagement.
So I purposely wanted to highlight the Eugene Washington Engagement Awards, one, because it's our funding source for this project, and I'm so grateful for PCORI, for Leah, for Chinenye coming all the way across the country to be here, and to my project officer, Alicia, who is about to give birth to a little baby, so she couldn't be here in person. It's so, as we've talked about, one of the things is how do you have that programmatic support to do this work that is about building infrastructure and relationships and tools and training that make it so you're not doing that as part of every single new grant. So this is unique to PCORI in terms of really recognizing this and carving out space for this. And I know there's a couple of folks who are Tier 1 projects, who are Tier 1, Tier 2, will probably be Tier 3, that we have other engagement awardees in the room. I suspect some of the ideas that we've talked about could bode well for a future engagement award. And as I said earlier, this information, the discussion that we've had, will be available to this community. It will be put up as open content for somebody that might want to take one of these ideas further for their own work. So my thanks, Leah, to you for taking time out of your late afternoon and sharing more about the program. In your booklets, there's a copy about that kind of highlights what Leah talked about in her slides, provides more information about ways to get involved. One last question. I know Janice is one. How many people here are ambassadors? 1, 2, 3. So not very many. I think that this. Yep. Perfect. I mean, I encourage, as a researcher, I'm an ambassador, and it's a really great forum to connect with other people. We've actually done outreach for some of our projects as they've developed through that forum. Really good discussion threads on a number of topics. So I will promote that from my own personal experience too. It's worthwhile checking out. Yep. Oh, yes, it is. There should be a K before the S. Hotchkiss. She just caught a typo on your email address, Leah. That's all.
Oh, geez. Thank you for pointing that out.
Perfect. All right, so for our next, we are going to disconnect with Leah. Thank you so much, Leah, for joining us.
Great, thanks so much, and thanks for timing